Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is a kids' movie about death. Straight up. It is a film which is, at its core, about one of the most challenging things for any human to come to terms with. Something we all have to get good with at some point. I don't know about all of you, but I struggle quite a bit with the concept of mortality. There are some movies, shows, and books focused around death that are quite challenging for me to get through at this stage in my life. So I was fascinated by how Puss in Boots delivered a hefty dose of reality directly into my soul in a way that only flirted with the edge of existentially terrifying, while remaining grounded in levity. I think the key to this accomplishment lies in reversing a classic trope of horror. It's an example of how rules for certain genres can also provide us with guidelines of how to do the opposite well. Picture this. You're watching a horror movie. It opens with an establishing scene of a dark hallway. The camera slowly pushes through the hallway as fluorescent tube lights flicker and cast a sickly glow on the debris cluttering the corridor. Slowly, you start to hear an awful, wet, sloppy munching sound as the camera approaches a 90-degree bend in the hallway. As the light at the end of the hall flickers to life for a moment, you can see a pair of human legs writhing, the rest of the body obscured around the corner. The sound grows louder and louder, and as the light continues to flicker, a shadow is cast upon the wall ahead, a shape that you can't quite make out. Strobed against the wall, the silhouette keeps morphing. Something is there, but you don't know what. The camera slowly begins to turn the corner. The sound gets louder. The lights flicker out. Scary, huh? Scenes like this play directly into our fear of the unknown. It's been shown time and time again that uncertainty increases our natural stress level around any situation. If you know you're going to be electrocuted once after 1 minute, it's less scary than knowing there's a 50% chance you could be electrocuted somewhere in the next minute. It's an incredible tool for the horror writer, and quite often we see examples where a scary movie is very compelling right up until the monster is revealed, when suddenly the CGI creature or giant puppet is nowhere near as scary as what our uncertain mind has conjured up. So how does Puss in Boots utilize this trope to make something terrifying more digestible? Well, by doing exactly the opposite. Puss in Boots reveals its monster at the beginning of the film, right away. It takes the nameless fear and gives it form. A big bad form, but a form nonetheless. See, concepts like mortality are scary because they aren't tangible. They aren't things we can physically tackle, manipulate, or fight. We have to grapple with them mentally, metaphorically. And that can be a much harder battle. The Last Wish takes the ephemeral concept of death and gives Puss, and the audience, someone to defeat. Someone to conquer physically on our way to the real mental victory of acceptance. Puss is introduced to us in musical fashion as the classic swashbuckling rogue who fights his way out of any problem and can't be touched by a blade. He does not fear death and will take on any challenge with his physical prowess. So when death comes to visit him, he responds in typical Puss fashion, by trying to fight him off. However, every single trick up his sleeve is easily parried, and death quickly disarms and, crucially, injures Puss. In one critical moment, outlined in bright red, Puss's self-image is shattered. Everything he thought he could count on has fallen out from under him, and for the first time in his life, he's scared. If we look even a little bit deeper into this, we notice that what has happened to Puss just now is something that has happened or will happen to all of us. The sudden, deep realization of our mortality. Puss reacts how many of us do, sheer panic. And like many of us, he runs. He leaves all of the things he loves behind, literally and metaphorically putting down his sword and fleeing into the woods. He then settles into a life that is safe, with a hefty set of quotation marks, but one that he despises somewhere in his core, a life he knows deep down is not for him. Replace the realization of mortality with any other trauma, and what you have here is a pretty clear picture I think everyone can see in themselves to some extent. A trauma occurs, we leave behind the things we love out of fear, and replace them with a seemingly safe life that merely prevents us from having to look at the thing that scares us. It doesn't make it go away, and it doesn't help us come to terms with it. It can't last. And it doesn't. Puss's new life is blown to smithereens by the sudden introduction of a minor villain, something Puss is familiar with, something he can tackle with his normal set of skills. And on top of that, their arrival brings word of a potential solution to his greater problem, a way of preventing his mortality, a way of turning himself back into the happy-go-lucky, carefree swashbuckler he's always been. This seems like progress for Puss. He's back to his normal self, running around, braving challenges, and defeating his enemies. He even secures the map to his immortality, a star which will allow him to wish for his missing 8 lives back. Just as he reaches this new peak and the audience starts to feel that he's back to normal, he spots death in the crowd. And the pretty little picture he's been painting for himself begins to crumble once again. And we start to realize that Puss is still running. As the adventure continues, we see this recurring pattern of minor success followed by reminder of death. Every time Puss thinks he's winning this fight, he is reminded that the thing he's trying not to look at will not go away. The climactic moment comes when Puss is confronted in the Cave of Lost Souls by Death. We find out that Death is particularly angry with Puss because not only was he given more than 1 life, but he let 8 of them go without a care in the world. With no thought for the gift of living, his first 8 lives went uncherished, while others are only given 1. He tells Puss he might as well take this last life from him too, since the other 8 clearly meant nothing. Death nearly gives Puss the answer to his problem right here, but Puss is once again too afraid to look it in the eye. When Puss and his companions finally reach the star, Death makes his final appearance. Puss has the wish in his hands, the way out. He can get his 9 lives back and return to living without a care. He can keep running for a time before he has to look Death in the eyes again. Or he can stand and fight. He stops for a moment and allows images to play through his mind. Friends he cherishes, people he loves, things he wants to do. In this moment, he finally realizes the big quotation marks around the safety of more lives. He cannot escape death, no matter how many more lives he gets, but he can fight for this life, and fight he does. We're treated to a visually stunning fight scene that sees Puss use not only old skills, but new ones to temporarily defeat the wolf. Death agrees to leave, but reminds Puss that he will be back eventually. This physical victory helps bring closure to what would otherwise be a non-solution. Remember, one of the only reasons this movie isn't existentially scary is because the villain is tangible and shaped like a cartoon wolf. In reality, it was not Puss's physical victory here that staved off death, but his acceptance that he can't truly escape the wolf, and the realization that 1 life cherished is worth more than any amount of lives spent running. The last wish is a roadmap to acceptance of the things we cannot change. Often in life, we find ourselves stunned by a trauma which we refuse to accept. Whether by chemical distraction, physical distance, or mental gymnastics, we run to a place of counterfeit safety, removing ourselves from the people, places, and things that we love. But that wolf remains in the back of our mind. We may forget about him for a while, but he will return and we will be forced to run again, further and further from the life we love. The only way we can truly escape this cat and mouse game is by turning around, looking the big bad wolf in the eye, and telling him that we know we can't defeat him, but we will stand our ground. We will seize control of the things that are within our power. We will put our focus into our passions, and we will keep fighting for the things we love. Only then will the wolf leave us alone until our time comes, and then he will come not in anger, but in peace.